Hello and welcome back to another historical video. This time it's going to be about La Horgne, and I'm here with a special guest. It's Captain Bocquier. He is the mapper of La Horgne together with La Hire, and he is also very knowledgeable on the Battle of France in 1940. So we're going to go through Fall Gelb, the massive operation of the Germans to defeat the French in 1940, and after that we'll go into detail about what happened at La Horgne. The Battle of France and Fall Gelb is of course known because of the fact that the Germans used a new tactic which they called the Blitzkrieg, which is lightning war, and it means that they are going to attack the enemy very fast, and they use breakthrough equipment like tanks and dive bombers to overwhelm the enemy and then exploit the holes in the front that they created so they can surround the enemy forces and quickly defeat an army. The Germans had used this tactic before in Poland, in Fall Gelb, and also in other battles before they attacked France. And they had been very successful in this tactic, so they would use it again in France 1940. As you can see here, there's a bunch of tanks here, the Panzer IV, the Panzer III, and the Panzer II. And they have various colors in their camouflage pattern on the tanks. In Fall Gelb, the tanks were Feldgrau, and Feldgrau was a German invention for World War I, and they used it on their equipment in World War II as well. But from recent photographs, the conclusion can be drawn that there are several patterns which involved brown colors as well. So it was applied on the vehicles on this map to portray that new finding in historical research. Also with us now is La Hire, the other mapper of La Horgne, and he'll help us in giving some extra info on the Battle of La Horgne whenever he can. In Fall Gelb, the Germans wanted to cut the Allied armies in two, so to lure the Allied armies to the north on the western side, they attacked the Netherlands and Belgium, and the plan worked pretty efficiently because the British Expeditionary Force and a part of the French army went north to help the Belgians and the Dutch in their fight against the German invaders. The Germans went on to invade France and wanted to cross the Meuse River on three places, at Dinant, Monthermé and Sedan. And on this road sign over here, we can see that name Sedan at the bottom. The other names on this road sign are Mézières, Poitevin and Montmédy, which are towns in the vicinity of Sedan. In Sedan, the fight went in favor of the Germans, and they crossed the river on the 13th of May. The Germans did the cutting of the French army by crossing the Meuse River, and that was called the famous sickle cut move. And after that they moved south, and the French, who were thinking that the Germans might want to surround the Maginot Line, the defensive line of bunkers on the eastern border of France, they wanted to block that move by the Germans, and went on to send reinforcements north and east in order to block the Germans from surrounding the Maginot Line. We are here west of Sedan, and this region was in the center of what was later called the sickle cut move. The French defenders of La Horgne were ordered to hold the Germans as long as possible, because behind La Horgne there were no other French forces able to stop the German invaders. So the Battle of La Horgne was most important for the French army in order to make sure that the Germans would not roll over the French countryside without any resistance. Facing the 1st Panzer Division that was driving down this road would be the 3rd Spahi Brigade, and the Spahi Brigade is a special unit because they are colonial soldiers. And as you can see from the player model right here, it looks different from the French player models. Spahi soldiers were mostly soldiers from North Africa, from the French colonies over there, like Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. And the Spahi were mostly soldiers from those countries, mixed with some pieds noirs, who are people who were born in the colonies from French parents, and there were a few French officers, especially in the higher ranks. The Spahi were colonial troops, and they have separate player models, as you can see over here. And for example, the trousers are different than the trousers from regular French troops. We've got a Spahi soldier here and a French NCO. And the French were about 67 officers out of 2,400 troops available at La Horgne. So that will give you an idea of how many colonial troops were there and how many French ones. And the wide trousers are a bit more traditional, and the Spahi soldiers were more used to wearing these trousers. Also, for the helmets, they had, as you can see on the NCO player model, they had this cloth wrapped around the helmet. And that was because of two different reasons. One reason was that the helmet would be less shiny in sunlight, just like the Germans used to wrap cloth around their spiked helmets in World War I. And also because of the headscarf, which was a traditional headgear in North Africa. And it would be a sort of a combination between the French Adrien helmet and the headscarf.
As you can see, as I'm an NCO with a scout kit, I have the cavalry gaiters, which are quite large, and also some cavalry trousers, which are different from the small gaiters the Spahi player models have, and the baggy pants.
Yeah.
Also note the specific bandolier the Spahis are wearing. They got all their let's say that important gear on them, with all the ammo available on their torso and on their waist, and also the knife they will put on their Berthier mousqueton, so the bayonet with hanging on their torso too.
Yes. Okay, so those bandoliers were typical of Spahi because they were a cavalry unit.
Yeah, there were other cavalry units with French troops, but they were different type of bandoliers. And
okay.
Also, as you said, Slayer, the high-ranking officer were mostly French, but the lower you will get, the more you will have indigenous NCOs, etc.
Okay. So like a sergeant or lieutenant could also be a Spahi.
Yeah, and most of the sergeants were actually from North Africa or Pieds Noirs.
Yeah.
While the high-ranking, well, mostly French. Yeah.
And the commands were all in French or also in North African languages?
Both.
Okay.
Actually, we've made this map based on the thesis of Frenchman Thierry Monet on La Horgne, and he has made a list of all the soldiers and officers were listed if a soldier was speaking French, Arabic, if he was able to write French, write Arabic, and understand, etc., etc. So there is quite a lot of info on that thesis, and it also answers this question.
Okay. Cavalry unit, but of course these guys were not fighting from horseback. There have been some myths in the past about the Spahi attacking the German tanks on horseback, but it's just about as big as a myth as the Polish cavalry attacking the German tanks with spears on horseback. It's the idea behind cavalry units in World War II was that they would ride to the battle on horseback and then dismount and fight. While the Germans were approaching on the road, the Spahi Brigade had scouts around these forested parts, and their orders were to spot for the enemy and then report to the town. So as soon as they saw the Germans arrive, they fell back into the town and gave the intel to their commanding officers. The defense of La Horgne was set up in 3 lines. As you can see on the map, there are 3 flags in front. So the front line consisted of Voirin Farm, Church, and La Tour Farm. So the farms were supporting the flanks of the town in the defense. The second line, the support line, was at the graveyard and at Perrotin Farm, and the fallback line was at the main base. So the 3rd Spahi Brigade, you can see some trenches over there, and this was also where they dismounted from their horses, and they would leave the horses over there and then go on foot to the town. When the Germans arrived at La Horgne, they didn't really expect any real resistance, so the first troops that were moving in were pioneers, because the recon plane that had been flying around the area for some time had spotted several obstacles which had to be removed. So the pioneers would move in and they would just try to remove these obstacles, like this one over here, by blowing them up or just dragging them to the sides of the road. Well, this blockade, after it had been removed, then the road to La Horgne was free, of course, so then the Germans moved into the town and would try to take it. But, well, as we have seen, the Spahi Brigade would be in the town, and the Germans came under fire. So when they noticed there was resistance, they were sending more troops in order to make sure that the resistance of the French would be wiped out. And therefore they sent first some half-tracks, and then after that they would send some light tanks, and then they would send heavier and heavier units in order to make sure that the town could be taken. Here we are at another blockade, which is in the main street at the church, and you can see there's several pieces of furniture, even a piano, and there have been some historical photographs in which you can see this barricade, and then you can also see a cart in it, and also this FT-17 tank, which is from World War I, right?
Yes.
Anyone?
The tank dates from World War I, but this tank was actually manned some days before the battle by units. It was the 33 BCC, so 33e Brigade de Chars de Combat, which was equipped with Renault FT, some with guns, like that, and some only with MGs. So okay. Here we have one with gun, and we guessed that the 3 tanks which are abandoned in La Horgne, they were aware of the incoming German Panzer Division, and they just said, "Screw this! We are not fighting a Panzer Division with 3 FT."
Yeah, of course, because the strength of the FT-17 against the strength of the German armored division was, well, a bit lopsided in favor of the Germans.
It's really an obsolete tank. It's only useful for police duty. It's an obsolete tank in 1940.
Mm-hmm. And why were they even still in service?
Because the French rearmament was really starting late after the Front Populaire and the various action of Hitler in the late 1930s. France decided, to put everything it had on armament. But before that, in the early 1930s and even in the late 1920s, they started to cut budget for the army. And the vast majority of the budget was actually allowed to the Maginot Line.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So actually, it was very comparable to a lot of other countries that were also cutting
Yes.
budgets for the army because of the economical crisis, and because it didn't really look like there was going to be another war. So they would cut budgets, and then when Hitler was rearming Germany, then some countries would think, okay, maybe it's a good idea to spend a bit more on the army.
Yeah.
And then these guys were still around, and I guess that the best units didn't get these tanks. They would get better tanks, but these tanks would be in service with lesser important units.
You have to know that half of the French tanks were in armored divisions. So you would have DLMs and DCRs, so Division Légère Mécanique and Division Cuirassée de Réserve. So a vast majority of the DLMs were sent in Belgium, where, for example, they fought around Anut, Blue, etc. While the DCRs were in the Ardennes area. You had the first in Flavion, you had the third in Stone, and the fourth one was actually in Creation.
Okay. Yeah.
Of the region of France.
Yeah, a nice detail is that the first was in Flavion and the third was in Ston, which are also two maps in 2.6 release. The 3rd Spahi Brigade had very limited AT weaponry. They had the FT-17s that we have just seen in the barricade, but, well, they were not really up to par with the German Panzers. And there were 3 AT guns spread across the town, of which we can see one positioned here in the church. And but this is a bit of a detail that is not 100% historically accurate.
Yeah, actually, so the French had this kind of weapon, the 25mm guns, but they haven't received all they should have. Instead, in the church, there was a 37mm gun, which dated from World War I. It was actually the same ammo that the tank in the barricade behind have. So the soldiers from this AT gun actually took the ammo left by the crew who flee from the area, from the tank, and bring it to the church to have more ammo to fight off the German.
Okay, so and that ammo was from which tanks?
The one just behind.
Okay, so from the FT-17s.
Yeah, of course the Spahis also have some ammo on their horses for this gun, but they had more, and it really helped to fight off the Germans all the day. The 37mm gun in the church was the only capable gun able to fire 80 rounds to the Germans. The other gun, the 25mm guns, have only 80 shells. So it was kind of fortunate that the Spahis were able to retrieve some ammo from this tank and to bring it into the gun in the church to fire the various half track and infantry coming down the road to attack the town. Also, you have to note that the French were also equipped with Horgne guns like this.
They're also from World War I, right?
Yes, 1944. And the MGs were actually a small unit inside the Spahi Brigade, like the tank, which was on truck, actually.
Okay, and these are the trucks they were using to transport the MGs, and the AT guns were pulled by horses, and the MGs were transported by these trucks.
Yeah. Well, yes, and also some other crates, ammo, etc. in the trucks. It was not only MGs, of course. But also, these trucks are not really the trucks that were in real life. It was a Mat4 truck, so a kind of licensed Ford truck made in France. But here we have some Citroën truck with the right emblems of the first Spahi Brigade.
Okay.
And the little blue square of the cavalry.
Okay, so the markings are correct, but the model of the truck is actually a different one.
Yeah, but the Citroën trucks really widespread, and the French trucks were really not an homogeneous thing. It was really a lot of different trucks, a lot of different firms doing the trucks, etc., etc.
So the Germans were arriving over this road and they were aiming at removing the obstacles in front of the town, but because they were under fire from the church area where we just were, they had to wait for armored reinforcements to come. And when they arrived, the German tanks, they would take the farms in what became a classic German move in splitting the army and surrounding the town. With the support of the German panzers, they took La Tour farm, which we can see here. Then the Germans took Voirin farm, which we can see here. It doesn't exist anymore today, so it was only there in 1940. And the last farm the Germans took was Perrotin farm. And we can see it over here. It's a farm which is attached to the town of La Horgne. Nice, the clock.
As we saw, we have the first 80 gun in the church, and there were two 80 guns of this type on the support line, which were tasked to shoot any tank trying to flank on the right or on the left of the town. So we got this one here at Perrotin.
And this was also a 37mm in real life?
No. It was actually this gun.
This was a 25.
Yeah, 25 SA 34.
Okay.
And also the other one, which is cemetery. Yeah.
Near the another barricade with an AFT tank. Up.
So for this AT gun they could also take the ammo from the FT?
No, because this AFT was actually an MG tank.
Oh, okay.
We 7.5mm gun. So they couldn't, and they couldn't use this ammo for the Hotchkiss since it's 8mm label.
Oh, okay. So that was a bit unlucky.
Yeah, they could use it maybe for the FM 2429, which is La Hire, what he's holding right now.
Oh,
but
yeah,
they
of course.
Put out the bullet from the magazines and then put it back into empty mag for this particular gun. So
yeah,
not really easy.
No, it sounds a bit like defending a town on a shoestring.
Yeah.
And
so,
this one was a 25mm AT gun?
Yeah, two. So we got two 25mm gun watching the flanks and one 37mm gun on the front.
Okay. And when the Germans took the flanks, they surrounded the town. And how did they break down the defenses inside the town?
With masks, with artillery, with tanks, with grenades. They really swarmed the place with all they got to take the town. So a part of the French troops, which were over there, where I'm aiming right now, tried to counterattack the cemetery area where we are right now. but they were pinned down by grenades and tanks. And the French trapped in the town tried to escape. So some of them, even high-ranking officers, were killed in the process. And the rest surrendered in the town, while the other part of the brigade, which was on the fallback line, managed to fall back, to retreat, and to continue the fight up to mid-June.
Okay, so they went south in order to join other brigades.
Yeah, infantry divisions, etc., etc.
Okay, so the Germans were closing in on the defenders of La Horgne in the center of the town, and I guess the defenders were also outnumbered by a pretty large factor.
Yes. At the end of the day, at the beginning, the Germans were outnumbered, but
Okay.
the more you went into the afternoon, the more you will have some casualties in the French side, and the more you will have reinforcements, assets, advantages on the German side.
Okay, so the Germans massed more troops in the area after they found out there was some actual resistance. And even though the Spahi were outnumbered, they just held on for the day, but they couldn't get out of the town in the afternoon, and then they had to surrender.
Yeah, at the end of the day.
Okay. Okay, so this was a heroic stance of the 3rd Spahi Brigade, defending La Horgne and delaying the German advance into France, enabling the French to regroup a bit and send more reinforcements into the Ardennes region. If you like to see more stuff about colonial troops in the French army, there's at least one movie that I know of. It's called Indigène. It's not about 1940, but about the later stages in the war, where colonial troops from North Africa were sent to Italy to fight. But it gives you an insight of how colonial troops were performing and how they were part of the French army in the Second World War.
Well, for La Horgne, I would say the thesis from Thierry Monet, which is really the document we use to map this map with La Hire, which is really going into detail from before the battle, so the actions the Spahi took in Belgium, then the fight here, then the other fights before they were surrendered and captured in June. No movies was made on this battle. There is a song.
It's not so well known.
No, and it's actually just the myth of the cavalry charge against Panzers here. So it's not well known, and the little it is known is not for the for the good thing actually.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, well then, if you want to read a bit more about this battle, then you can also just download the dev blog on La Horgne. And well, then we're going to conclude this video. If you have any questions, then please post them in the comments. And if you have any additional info on the battle, then I'd also love to hear about it in the comments. Well, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'm thanking Captain Bocquier and La Hire for their info and their support on this video. And yeah, have a nice day.
Yeah.